Snow drifted gently across the streets as Christmas lights filled the town with warmth. Couples laughed together, families carried wrapped gifts, and children pointed excitedly at glowing decorations. It looked like the perfect Christmas evening. But for one woman sitting alone inside a quiet restaurant, it was the loneliest night of her life. Victoria glanced at the empty chair across from her for what felt like the 100th time. Her coffee had gone cold. The candle between the two seats had almost burned down. She checked her phone again. No message. No apology. Then finally her phone buzzed. Her heart raced. She smiled for one hopeful second before opening the message. "I'm sorry. I just found out you're divorced. I don't think we're looking for the same future. Merry Christmas." Victoria stared at the words. She didn't cry. Not yet. She simply locked the phone, placed it face down on the table, and whispered to herself, "I should have known." Before we continue this unforgettable Christmas story, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that hope can appear when we least expect it, and you won't want to miss more heartwarming journeys just like this one. Victoria slowly stood, thanked the waitress with a polite smile she didn't truly feel, paid the bill, and stepped into the freezing December night. She had been rejected before. But somehow, Christmas made this one hurt even more. At 38 years old, Victoria had spent nearly 15 years caring for children as a pediatric nurse. Every day she comforted frightened little patients. She held tiny hands before surgeries. She stayed late after shifts just to make sure worried parents were okay. The hospital staff often joked that she had enough love in her heart to raise 10 children. But every evening she returned home to an apartment filled with silence. Years earlier, Victoria had believed she already had her happy ending. She had married young. She and her husband dreamed about buying a small house, raising children, and growing old together. Instead, after years of trying unsuccessfully to have a baby, their marriage slowly fell apart. Arguments replaced laughter. Distance replaced love. Eventually he left. A year later he married someone else. Within 2 years they had a son. Victoria had smiled politely when mutual friends shared the news. Then she had gone home and cried until morning. After the divorce, friends encouraged her to date again. "You're kind. You're beautiful. You're the type of woman any man would be lucky to have." But reality felt different. Some men disappeared after hearing she was divorced. Others wanted someone younger. Some quietly admitted they wanted biological children as soon as possible. Each rejection added another invisible crack to her heart. Eventually she stopped believing the compliments. She began believing the silence instead. Tonight's blind date had been arranged by one of her co-workers. "He seems perfect," her friend had promised. "He's honest, successful, and loves Christmas." Victoria almost canceled. Something inside her whispered not to hope anymore. But another small part of her, the part that refused to completely give up, convinced her to try one last time. Now she knew how that decision had ended. Snowflakes landed softly on her coat as she walked through the decorated streets. Store windows sparkled with Christmas displays. Families posed for pictures beside giant trees. Carolers sang joyful songs outside the town square. Everything around her celebrated togetherness. Everything inside her felt empty. She stopped beside a public bench, too exhausted to keep walking. Across the street, she noticed a little girl struggling to reach a candy cane ornament hanging from a low Christmas tree outside a bakery. The ornament slipped from the branch and landed in the snow. Before anyone else reacted, Victoria crossed the street. She picked up the ornament, brushed away the snow, and knelt beside the child. "There you go," she said gently. The little girl smiled with bright blue eyes. "Thank you. You're very welcome." The girl tilted her head. "You look sad." Victoria forced a small laugh. "Do I?" "A little." Children always notice things adults ignored. Victoria smiled softly. "I'm okay." The little girl didn't seem convinced. "My grandma says people smile with their mouths when they're sad." Victoria blinked. "What does she say about their eyes?" "They tell the truth." Victoria looked away before tears could escape. Just then an older woman approached carrying several shopping bags. "There you are, Emma," she called. Then she noticed Victoria. "Oh dear, thank you for helping her." "It was nothing." Emma immediately shook her head. "It wasn't nothing." Her grandmother smiled knowingly. "She's right." Before Victoria could excuse herself, Emma reached for her hand. "Are you eating Christmas dinner alone?" Victoria hesitated. Yes." Emma frowned as if hearing the saddest thing imaginable. "You can't." Victoria chuckled. "I think I can." "No," Emma insisted with complete seriousness. Nobody should be alone on Christmas. The grandmother looked embarrassed. Emma, sweetheart. But Emma wasn't finished. You can come with us. Victoria's eyes widened. Oh, I couldn't possibly. You can. I'd only be interrupting. You wouldn't. Victoria laughed despite herself. You don't even know me. Emma answered without hesitation. I know you're kind. For a brief moment, Victoria forgot about the painful text message. She simply looked at this fearless little girl whose kindness seemed completely natural. Then a man's voice called from nearby. Emma? Victoria turned. A tall man carried several grocery bags toward them. He looked tired but gentle, dressed in a dark winter coat with snow resting on his shoulders. Emma's face lit up. Daddy? She ran into his arms. The man smiled before looking toward Victoria. Everything okay? Emma answered first. Daddy, this is Victoria. He looked pleasantly confused. Nice to meet you. Victoria smiled politely. You too. Emma grabbed his sleeve. Victoria was sad. Daniel looked awkward. I'm sorry if Emma bothered you. She didn't. Emma folded her arms. She needs Christmas dinner. Daniel looked from his daughter to Victoria, unsure whether to laugh or apologize. Emma? I'm serious. Victoria quickly waved her hands. It's all right. She was only being sweet. Emma looked directly at her father. We can't leave her alone. Daniel sighed quietly. His parents exchanged glances. Finally, his mother stepped closer. Our table always has one extra chair. Victoria shook her head. That's very generous, but I really shouldn't. Daniel spoke gently for the first time. Sometimes accepting kindness is harder than giving it. Those words caught her completely off guard. He understood something. She could hear it in his voice. Not pity. Experience. For the first time that evening, she truly looked at him. There was sadness behind his smile too. Different from hers. Older somehow. As though he had learned to live beside it instead of fighting it. Emma tugged Victoria's sleeve. Please? Victoria looked around. The streets were full of strangers rushing home to their families. If she refused, she would return to an empty apartment. Heat up frozen soup. Watch television alone. Pretend Christmas was just another day. If she accepted, she would spend one evening with people whose names she had learned only minutes earlier. Her heart told her it was foolish. But something even quieter whispered. Maybe this was exactly where she was supposed to be. Victoria took a slow breath. If you're absolutely sure. Emma jumped with excitement. Yay. Daniel laughed for the first time. Looks like the decision has already been made. As they walked toward the parking lot together, Victoria had no idea that the little girl holding her hand wasn't simply leading her to Christmas dinner. She was quietly leading her toward the family she had spent years praying for, even after she'd stopped believing anyone was listening. The warmth of Daniel's home wrapped around Victoria the moment she stepped inside. The smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and fresh cookies filled every room. Christmas music played softly in the background, and stockings hung neatly above the fireplace. Family photographs covered one wall, each telling the story of happier days. Victoria quietly removed her coat. It's beautiful, she whispered. Daniel's mother smiled warmly. Thank you. We try to make Christmas feel special for Emma. Emma grabbed Victoria's hand again. Come see the tree. She practically pulled her across the living room. The Christmas tree stretched nearly to the ceiling, glowing with hundreds of tiny lights. Handmade ornaments mixed with family treasures collected over many years. Emma proudly pointed to one small ornament shaped like a snowflake. My mommy made that. The room grew quiet. Victoria looked gently toward Daniel. His smile remained, but his eyes softened with pain. Emma continued without sadness, as only a child could. Mommy is in heaven now. Daddy says she still watches every Christmas. Victoria knelt beside her. I'm sure she does. Emma smiled. I think she'd like you. Victoria's heart skipped a beat. Before she could answer, Daniel's father cheerfully called everyone to dinner. Around the table, conversation flowed naturally. Daniel's parents asked Victoria about her work at the children's hospital. She shared funny stories about young patients who insisted bandages gave them superhero powers. Everyone laughed. Even Daniel. It was the first genuine laugh Victoria had heard from him all evening. After dinner, Emma disappeared upstairs and returned carrying several board games. You have to play. Victoria looked at Daniel. I hope I'm not staying too long. He smiled. For the first time in months, Emma hasn't asked when everyone is leaving. That simple sentence carried more meaning than he intended. As the evening unfolded, Victoria noticed small things. Daniel automatically set aside a second coffee mug before remembering there was no one to use it. His parents exchanged quiet looks whenever Emma mentioned her mother. The grief was no longer loud. It had simply become part of the house. Later that evening, Emma fell asleep on the couch with her head resting against Victoria's shoulder. Daniel covered his daughter with a blanket. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For what?" "She's usually shy around new people." Victoria gently brushed a strand of hair from Emma's face. "I don't mind." Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "Thank you for saying yes tonight." Victoria looked into the fire. "I almost said no." "I'm glad you didn't." For several seconds neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "My wife, Sarah, she passed away 3 years ago." Victoria quietly nodded. "Car accident." "I'm so sorry." "So was I." He smiled sadly. "Some days I still am." Victoria understood that kind of pain. "The hardest part," Daniel continued, "wasn't losing my wife." She looked at him with surprise. It was watching Emma lose her mother. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I know what it's like to want something you can't give someone." Daniel looked at her. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "I always wanted children." She paused. But life had other plans. There was no need to explain further. He understood. Two strangers sat quietly beside the fireplace. Neither offered advice. Neither tried to fix the other's pain. Sometimes understanding was enough. That Christmas night ended with warm hugs and promises to stay in touch. Victoria assumed it had simply been one unforgettable evening. She was wrong. 2 days later, her phone rang. It was Daniel. "Emma made too many cookies." Victoria laughed. "Too many?" "I didn't think it was possible either." "So, would you help us eat them?" She smiled. "I'd love to." One visit became another. Soon they met for coffee. Then walks through the park. Then Saturday afternoons decorating cookies or building snowmen with Emma. Weeks quietly turned into months. Without realizing it, Victoria stopped spending every evening alone. She became part of their routine. Emma saved her a seat during family dinners. Daniel's parents welcomed her like someone they had known for years. Even the neighbors assumed she belonged there. Yet neither Victoria nor Daniel ever spoke about love. Both were afraid. Victoria feared another rejection. Daniel feared opening his heart only to lose someone again. So they remained friends. Wonderful, comfortable friends. Until one spring afternoon changed everything. Emma's elementary school held a family day picnic. Parents, grandparents, and children filled the playground. Victoria volunteered to help serve snacks. As she carried a tray of lemonade, she heard Emma talking with one of her classmates. "Where's your mommy?" the little girl asked. Emma looked toward Victoria, then toward Daniel. Finally she smiled. "I think she's coming." The other child looked confused. Emma walked directly toward Victoria. She gently took both of Victoria's hands. Her voice was quiet enough for only a few people nearby to hear. "Can you be my new mom?" Everything stopped. The laughter. The conversations. Even the birds seemed silent. Victoria's eyes filled instantly. Daniel stood frozen several feet away. Emma looked from one adult to the other. "I know nobody can replace my first mommy." She swallowed. "But my heart has room for two." Victoria could no longer hold back her tears. She knelt and wrapped Emma in the biggest hug she had ever given. "I love you so much." Emma whispered into her shoulder. "I love you too." Daniel slowly walked over. His own eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," he said. "She didn't plan this." Victoria looked at him through tears. "I'm glad she didn't." That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep, Daniel invited Victoria onto the back porch. The spring air was cool. Stars filled the sky. "I've been afraid," Daniel admitted. "So have I. I thought loving someone again would somehow betray Sarah." Victoria gently shook her head. "Love doesn't erase love." He looked at her. "It makes room for more." Daniel smiled through tears. "And I've been afraid you'd decide we're too complicated." Victoria laughed softly. "I've spent years believing no family would ever choose me." She reached for his hand. "Then yours did." Daniel held her hand tightly. "No." He smiled. "You chose us too." Several months later, on a bright autumn afternoon, friends and family gathered beneath colorful trees. It wasn't a large wedding. It didn't need to be. Emma wore a white dress covered in tiny flowers. She proudly carried the rings. When the ceremony ended, the minister introduced Victoria and Daniel as husband and wife. Everyone applauded. Emma ran straight into Victoria's arms. Without thinking. Without hesitation. She looked up and said the one word Victoria had dreamed of hearing for most of her life. "Mom?" Victoria broke into tears. Happy tears. The kind she once believed would never belong to her. Daniel wrapped both of them in his arms while his parents smiled through their own tears. Months later, Victoria officially moved into the house that had first welcomed her as a lonely stranger on Christmas night. The empty apartment was gone. Its silence was gone too. Now mornings began with Emma racing down the hallway. Weekends were filled with pancakes, school projects, family movie nights, and laughter echoing through every room. The house that once carried only memories of loss now overflowed with hope. One snowy Christmas Eve, nearly 2 years after that heartbreaking blind date, Victoria stood beside the same living room window where she had first admired their Christmas tree. Emma hugged her from behind. "Best Christmas ever." Victoria smiled. "It really is." Daniel placed an arm around both of them. "You know." He looked at Victoria. "If that man had shown up for your blind date." Victoria finished the sentence with a smile. "I never would have found the family I was meant to have." Outside, snow once again covered the streets. Somewhere, another lonely person was probably wondering if hope had forgotten them. But Victoria now knew something she wished everyone could believe. Sometimes life closes one door so quietly that we only hear the sound of loss. What we don't hear is another door opening somewhere ahead. The greatest blessings often arrive wearing ordinary clothes. A little girl's kindness. A family with one empty chair. A Christmas invitation from complete strangers. Or a single question that changes everything. "Can you be my new mom?" The answer didn't just heal one little girl's heart. It healed 2 broken adults who had almost given up on love forever. Because real families are not always found by perfect timing. Sometimes they are built through compassion, courage, and the willingness to accept kindness when life offers it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that second chances are real. And always remember, the family meant for you may be closer than you think. It may simply be waiting for one small act of kindness to bring you home.